Yes, I do. I read Mexican Gothic. How did I forget? Let me go get it. Ow! Hey everyone, it's Jayla and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to talk to you about the thing that I've been doing this whole time, which was a 2020 challenge to make myself be more intentional with my reading and just give myself some goals for the year, which turned out to be a really weird year. But I made 20 challenges for 2020 back in January, and it is time to figure out whether or not I have completed it by going through everything that I read for it. While the challenges are numbered, they had no specific order I had to do them in as long as I complete them by the end of the year. So let's see how I did. For the first challenge, I had to complete a classic, and this was one I actually completed very early on in the year. Like, I was already going to read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald because it was 2020, and I was like, oh yes, the Roaring Twenties, we're back in our prime, we're gonna have a great year. I was young and naive then. But yeah, I wanted to read The Great Gatsby because it was 2020 and this takes place in the 1920s, and so I read this one. Challenge number 2 was to read a Stephen King novel, and I chose for that one The Outsider. Guess who it's by? Stephen King. I wanted to read this one because there was an HBO show coming out that adapted the book. I never really finished the adaptation, actually. I was very bored by it. I was not as bored by the book, but definitely kind of disappointed by it in the end. For my first Stephen King book, I was not that impressed, but I guess I'd be willing to try him again. And maybe something that was a little more classic and just everyone knows him for. So maybe I just made a mistake starting with, I think this is a more modern book. When was this published? Yeah, this came out in 2018, I think, so we'll try some older stuff. Challenge number 3 was to read an adult fantasy, and for this I chose my first ever N.K. Jemisin read, which was really fun. And that was How Long Till Black Future Month, and this was a really cool short story collection written by her, and it just follows a bunch of sci-fi and fantasy stories that have black protagonists, which you never get to see. So I really enjoyed reading this. There were so many really cool stories in here. Some of my favorites were The City Born Great, Red Dirt Witch, The Valedictorian, and there were definitely others, but I cannot remember them all right now. The next one was to read a book with less than 100 pages, and coming in at a whopping 48 pages, I chose We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Loved this. It's a short essay about why we should all be feminists. Men, women, non-binary people, all of us. We should all care about how the feminist movement is affecting us and why we should take part in it. And it was really good, and I think you know that already because it's a really popular book, so bye. Then I had to read a book with 600 plus pages, and I do not remember what I read for this, so let's go explore. This is 613. Yeah, this was the one. Actually, we should consult Goodreads because they tell you what your longest book of the year was. My longest book of the year was actually Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, but for this challenge I read Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray because I read the entire Diviner series, and this is the second book in that series. So yeah, we're gonna stick with the original one that we did, and we will talk more about the Diviners later on in this video, so stay tuned for that. Number 6 was to read an illustrated book that is not a graphic novel, and for that one I chose And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness. I ended up really enjoying this book, and I didn't go into it with any real expectations, but it was pretty good, and I don't think a lot of people talk about it. It is a Moby Dick retelling, but from like a reversed retelling from the whale's perspective. It's still written in that kind of novel form, but you just get lots of illustrations along with it, and it was really cool. Really enjoyed reading this. Very unique story, even though it's a retelling, but you know. Challenge number 7 was to read a book in a different language, and as of December 21st, is it the 22nd? The 22nd, actually. As of December 22nd, I haven't read that book, so I have not yet completed my 2020 challenge because number 7 is not done. So I am trying to do that quickly before the year ends, and I'm trying to find an online French book, like a French children's book, that I can read so that I can complete that, because I do not know any other languages very well. I took French in high school, and I took it a little bit in college, which was an interesting time we don't like to talk about. But yeah, I could definitely read a French children's book. I read French way better than I know how to speak it, or hear it really. So yeah, I'm looking for some like online PDF I can read of a French children's book, and I will complete that challenge as soon as possible. Number 8 is read a poetry collection by a person of color, and I have so many to choose from, but which one did I choose for this challenge? The poetry book I chose for this one was Soft Science by Franny Choi. I remember I read this for Asian Readathon back in May, and that was a really good time to read it, obviously. This poetry collection was not really for me, but I thought it was really cool, very well done. A lot of the stuff it was addressing went way over my head because it decided to talk in this kind of sci-fi-esque, very technical. I don't even know how to really explain it, but I talk about it in my very early on wrap-up, so you can go watch that, and I will link that up here. Or you can just go look it up. But it was a really cool collection. It just, I was not smart enough to read it. Challenge number 9 is to read a blind date book. And for this one, I was tasked with reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I haven't read Red Rising by Pierce Brown just yet. It has been on my shelf for probably about 3 or 4 years now. And unfortunately, I haven't gotten to it. I definitely only picked it up because there was so much hype around it. And I got it for $6.97, so yeah, it was a good time to just pick up this book. But my friend gifted me the sequel, and she was like, now you have to read Red Rising so you can complete your blind date book challenge. And so I am going to read this, hopefully before the year ends. Hopefully. It's not a big book, but it is a dense book, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. So challenge 10 was to read an English translated book, and for that one I read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I really enjoyed this. I read this at a time I had graduated from college and was about to do this thing for the summer to help me like on my path to my career. And I read this right before that summer course thing started, and it was really helpful for me. I'm pretty sure of what I want to do with my career, but I'm home and I just feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to be right now. And this book really helped me kind of just slow down and assess my journey and think about what I want to be doing versus what I could be doing to get there. It took a lot of pressure off me, this book, and I really enjoyed it. So if you're feeling those same types of crises, I would highly recommend this. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the author is Brazilian, and this was written, I assume, in Portuguese first, but I will go check. The next challenge was to read an Own Voices novel focused on mental health, and I chose Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams for this one. The book isn't really marketed in a way that really screams that Queenie is going through mental health issues, but she is definitely experiencing depression. I wouldn't argue like she's doing anything that's like self-harm, but basically she's doing a lot of, I don't know how to say it, but she's not taking care of herself, essentially. Queenie is definitely going through some stuff in this book, and it talks about the perks of therapy and seeking help for yourself, so this was a really good mental health read. The next book I had to read was one focused on vampires, and for that one I chose... Sorry, Miles. I chose The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This was not my cup of tea. It wasn't bad, per se, just really wasn't my jam, I guess. But I'm kind of tempted to read the second book, what is it called? The Dead? The Damned? The Damned. But yeah, this was my vampire book. I thought I really wanted to read it. I was really excited by it. I was like, oh yes, it's going to be steamy and romantic. And while it certainly was steamy, I just really wasn't connected to the characters that much and didn't enjoy this. So that's my vampire read. I'm not giving up on vampires, but I definitely think I'm more of a werewolf person, so I will continue to seek those out in the future. The next challenge, and I would say the most legitimate challenge, was to read a nonfiction book, and for that one I read Becoming by Michelle Obama, the glorious queen. We all love her, we adore her, we stan. I love this memoir. It was really good. I love Michelle's voice. I've heard the audiobook is really good. I should listen to it, but I'll save that for next year if I feel like rereading. But I really enjoyed this memoir, and I do not often read memoirs, which is why I was saying that this was like the most legitimate challenge, because I do not read nonfiction very often unless it's for school, and even then I can find a way to skim the book and not really read the information. So while I don't think Becoming was my first memoir, or at least definitely wasn't my first nonfiction read, obviously, but I definitely think this is the first one I really picked up because I wanted to and I really enjoyed it. Although for some reason when I was like 11 or 12, I found this book called The Invisible Wall by Harry Bernstein, and it was just this memoir. I don't know why I picked it up. I was 12 years old and I know what kind of books I was reading at like 11 and 12, and this just would not have fit the criteria. But it was about this guy, and I think he was Jewish, living during World War I. Yeah, he was a Jewish kid, and he was talking about living in this place in England where one side of the street was Christian families and the other side of the street was Jewish families. There's some sort of secret affair. I don't remember anything about this book except I actually really liked it. As a young child reading this heavy memoir. I really enjoyed it. So that's my first memoir, I think. But this was the first one after that I've sought out in a long time. Because this was unprompted. I found this at my dad's office. Someone had left it in like a lost and found box. And I picked it up and I was like, I want to read this. And I did. And here we are. I'm a memoir queen. Challenge 14 was to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I did it. As the Hunger Games series #1 fan, you already know I was going to complete this challenge. There was no doubt about it. Challenge 15 was to... Look what I did to my baby. I just picked it up and it was like this. Oh, that's horrible. Okay. What was I saying? I was saying challenge number 15 was to read an arc. I read this back in January or February. It was supposed to come out February of 2020, and I remember distinctly that I read it like February 5th or something, which is when it was initially supposed to come out, but they moved the date up for some reason. Oh. I just formed a theory, but I'm not going to share it. They moved the date up, and so by the time I read it, it had already come out technically, but it wasn't supposed to come out until after I had read it. So the challenge was to read the arc before the book came out, and I'm going to count it that I did. The next challenge was to read a complete trilogy, and I chose Daughter of Smoke and Bone for this one. 1, 2, 3. I reread that trilogy for the first time since high school this year. Absolutely loved it. Super much enjoyed it. Number 17, read a book set in Latin America. And I have no idea what I read for this one. Yes, I do. I read Mexican Gothic. How did I forget? Let me go get it. Ow! I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and this book it was my 2020. I had a great time reading this, and I'm so glad that challenge was on my list. I just want to say, like, it's not that I'm not reading these books without this challenge laid out in front of me, and it's not like I haven't been doing this before 2020. These challenges were just kind of fun things to put on the list and make sure that we're reading as diversely as possible, or just reading outside of our comfort zone. Again, this isn't outside of my comfort zone, although I had never read really a gothic horror before this, so it kind of was out of my comfort zone. I was actually going to read Woven in Moonlight for this challenge, but Lou from Lou Reads actually really trashed that book and explained why that book was horrible, and I'm so glad I watched that video. I think I learned a lot about racial tensions in certain countries. I don't remember exactly what countries it was right now, so I will leave the video and probably insert something later with the full details. But she taught me a lot about that. She gave me some insight onto why that book is not okay, and it is no longer on my list to read. The next challenge was to read a book that took place in the 1920s, and for that one, I chose The Diviners by Libba Bray. As I said earlier, I read the entire series this year. This has been on my shelf for so long. It is another book. When did I got this for cheap, but I guess I took the tag off. But I got this for like $5 at Books A Million, and I've had it on my shelf for 4 years, maybe longer. So when we made this book set in the 1920s challenge, I knew that this is the one I had to read because A, I didn't really have that many other options, but also I've just had this book for so long. And I ended up really, really enjoying this series. I read all the way to The King of Crows, which came out this year, so it was actually perfect the way it lined up. The King of Crows came out like right before I finished Before the Devil Breaks You, and so it was really perfect because it was the last book and it was published this year, and I'm just glad that I got to read it all kind of in one marathon. I think I was a little burnt out after reading this series though, because I didn't pick up fantasy for like months after that, but it was a really good series. Specifically, I think Lair of Dreams was my favorite book. I hated Evie, who was kind of the main character, even though it follows several main characters, so it was a little challenging to get through because of that, but this series is amazing, so I definitely see why it was so hyped up. So number 19 was to read a book with a 2020 series adaptation. What did I read with the 2020 series? I know what I read. Oh, the books are falling. 2020 was the year of Little Fires Everywhere. So I read Little Fires Everywhere. The Hulu adaptation came out back in May or April, I don't even remember. But it took me a long time to finally read the book. But I think I read this in August, and then I was able to watch the TV show adaptation of it. And I gotta say, the book is better, but we kind of knew that already, because most of the time that is the case. I just felt like the TV show added so much unnecessary drama when all the drama was already here. But that's TV, you know? It makes sense. The last challenge was to read a book with 20 letters in the title. I might have to go back and count the title of every book I read this year because I really don't know what I read for this one. So let's stay tuned for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19. Okay. Was it the Ballad of... No, I didn't do doubles. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, I lost count. 8, 9. Okay, 1, 2, 3. This is 20, but I don't think this is what I read. Oh, okay. So my 20-letter title was The Boy in the Black Suit by Jason Reynolds. Unfortunately, I didn't really like this book that much. It was not the best Jason Reynolds books I've ever read, and I read a lot of him, and I've loved almost everything that I've read by him except this. So yeah, not much to report on that, but that ends on such a bummer note, so oh well. Should I try and hold this up? Is that a mistake? Oh, just hit myself right in the face. All right, I think that's the 20 books. 23 books. Oh, well, we're not even gonna bother with those. Oh, I didn't even get it very far. That was no time at all. All right, these are some of the books that I read for the 2020 challenge. I'm out of breath, and that's embarrassing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really want your help coming up with my 2021 challenge. So 21 challenges to do to complete certain goals of reading, and I would really appreciate your help with that. It's not that I don't read translated works or that I don't read poets of color or anything like that, but it's always nice to be intentional and make sure you are getting them in. So please help me come up with some new challenges for the new year and leave them in the comments below. Along with commenting, feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel for more content from me. Have a great day or night, and I will talk to you in another video soon. Goodbye. Oh. Oh.